Hi, I'm Marcos with Costa Farms, and this is the second video in our beginner's guide for plants. If you want to check out the first video, which I highly recommend, you can click a link up here that'll take you to our video on light. There's also a link in the description down below. So let's get started with water. One of the most common questions we get when it comes to watering is how often you should water your plants. And I'm not going to answer that because it's the wrong question. What you should be asking yourself, and what I'm going to teach you, is how to tell if your plant needs watering. That's right, we're talking diagnostic care. So the reason why watering on a schedule or calendar-based watering doesn't actually work is because there's a lot of factors that are going to determine how often your plants need watering. How much light your plant is getting, what kind of temperature it's in, relative humidity, soil media that also play a part. So, if you can't go based on a calendar for low, medium, and high, what can you do? For each of those levels of water, low, medium, high, or thirsty, not thirsty, very thirsty, whatever system of 3 the tag uses, and it's always a system of 3 for some reason. I guess that's just the number people like. There is an appropriate way to tell whether your plant is thirsty or not. Your high water plants, things like your spats and your calatheas, they like to stay moist, and so you want to keep them moist, but not wet. So you should be thinking like a well-wrung sponge. When you touch it, it's definitely not dry. And usually with high water plants, just by looking, you can tell whether it needs water or not. You really want the whole soil mass to be feeling a little bit of something. Medium water plants can sometimes be a little bit trickier because unlike light, which again, we talked about in that video up here, and you should check it out if you haven't, it's possible to give a plant too much water and then you'll end up suffocating it or causing the roots to rot, which obviously is not great. And the way to tell if your medium water plant is ready for a little bit of love is to take your finger and stick it in the first 2 inches of soil, and if that feels dry, about half of the soil mass, then it's ready for a little bit more. Low water plants are drought resistant. They're designed to be forgotten by the environment and by you. You really don't have to worry too much about these, and you can let the first third of the soil mass dry out. So if you don't want to stick your hand all the way down to the bottom of the pot, because again, that's a little bit dirty, you can try picking up the plant, and you'll get a sense for how much it weighs when it's wet versus how much it weighs when it's been drying. This takes a little bit of time to get right, but you'd be surprised how quickly you can tell the difference between a plant that's drying and one that's wet. Water is heavy. I do have a bit of bad news though. When it comes to telling if your plant is overwatered or underwatered, those can sometimes look the same. Yellowing leaves and all that can happen from either one. Generally, too much water is way more dangerous than not enough water, because when you put too much water, it suffocates the roots, it can cause them to rot, it hurts the body of the plant, it hurts the plant's support system, and that can cause the whole plant to fail. When there's not enough water, that can usually affect the leaves more than anything else. I would always err on the side of underwatering, but again, if you're checking the soil, you should be able to tell what your plant needs. Check the tag and make sure that the moisture in the soil is appropriate for what the plant needs. Now you might see there's a lot of talk about drainage holes to let the water out, and if you're very careful about your watering and you only give a plant water when it absolutely needs it and you give it the right amount, then drainage actually isn't necessary because your plant is using up all the water that's there. If your pot does have drainage though, it really can save you because any extra water that you give it or any of that will just flow out safely. And that's an easy way to sort of course correct so that if you do give it a little bit too much love, your plant won't suffer. If the pot your plant's in doesn't have drainage, it's useful to keep it in a nursery pot or grower's pot. After you water, you can just take that nursery pot out and dump the excess water before putting your plant back in. But there is the drawback of drainage, which is water can get everywhere. If you have your plants in a nice table or something wooden and you don't want to spill water, then getting something without drainage might feel like a good option. Because after you water, then you can just pull your plant right out and dump anything that's left over. Hopefully this isn't too much for you, and if it is, we have links down below, and feel free to ask us any questions. We're always here to help. Look out for more of our beginner's guide videos that should be coming online shortly. And again, we're here to help.